All right. Thanks everyone for joining our webinar on digital marketing for wineries. Grateful to have today with us Ron Sharman, who's got a long and impactful history in the wine industry. And today is the CEO of Astra Digital and Fly with Wine. Ron's really the marketing expert here today, so he's going to be the one who's going through the presentation. Just before we get started, a little housekeeping. We are recording this session, so we're going to send that recording out afterwards. We're also going to send out the slides afterwards. So if you're, thinking about taking some notes, we will have those resources afterwards to you. And throughout the presentation here, if any questions come up on your end, pop them into the Q&A or to the chat there. And at the end, we're going to run through all the questions. So we will be looking at those at the end here. We'll have plenty of time for that. So without further delay here, I'm going to pass it over to Ron, who's going to take you through the presentation here today. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Zach. And thanks to Commerce7 for sponsoring this webinar today. I've got a lot of ground to cover. I'm excited to be here. The pandemic is on the downswing here, and there's a lot of exciting things happening in 2021 that we're going to go through as we look back on 2020. So I'm going to turn off my video here, and I'm going to focus on the presentation. So what we learned, digital marketing takeaways from 2020. Let's get this moving. So who am I and why am I here? Zach mentioned I'm CEO of Astra Digital. We're a digital marketing agency in downtown Napa. Been in business 5 years. And we really focus on DTC digital marketing for wineries and tourism destination. I'm also CEO of Fly with Wine, which is a company that markets the Vineyard Valise wine suitcase for traveling securely and safely with wine. We're in about 250 tasting rooms, and more importantly, in many ways, I use Fly with Wine as a laboratory, a sandbox to try out all kinds of digital tools and things that I think are relevant for wineries, which we then apply to our Astra Digital clientele if it works out. I've also been an instructor at Sonoma State for the last 8 years. I teach DTC marketing and wine e-commerce every spring semester. Before that, for my current situation, I was running Chatterbox Wine Marketing at vinovisit.com. I was also, before that, for 7 years, the owner and president of eWinery Solutions, which is now BinSuite. Before that, was chief operating officer of New Vine Logistics, which is now Wine Direct. And before that, I was CEO of the Morel Wine Group in New York. I've basically done everything in the wine industry but make wine, and I happened to be lucky enough to live through the transition from pretty much a 3-tier scenario for wine to the DTC, the explosion of direct consumer sales over the last 15 years. I also spent 15 years as a specialty retailer. Got my MBA at Cornell, and passionate about DTC wine marketing and educating the next generation of wine professionals. So that's me. And today we're going to talk about the current state of digital marketing and what we see coming down the pike. My question for the day, which I always use, even my courses at Sonoma State and seminars that I do, it's a fundamental question for digital marketers, not just in the wine industry, but particularly in the wine industry. How do we sell a 3-dimensional story in a 2-dimensional world? Wine is so experiential, and the experiences people have in wine country so important. How do you translate that in a 2-dimensional digital world, or 2.5 dimensions if you factor in telesales as well, right? So the truth is it's hard. It's hard because people come to the vineyards, they walk the vineyards, they feel the grapes, they smell the lees, they listen to the barnyard owls, they touch the barrels, they taste incredible wine, and then go out with their significant other and have an incredible meal. Then they go back someplace else, back east to home in the winter, and they get an email for a wine they may or may not care for. It's totally 2-dimensional, and somehow there's a disconnect. And so the art and science of being successful is in being able to tell your story and tell it well, what I call the magic 15%. That 15% to me is that translates to the fact that wine is essentially 85% water and 15% magic. And that magic is embodied in the stories that wineries tell. They may be next to each other on the Silverado Trail or on Route 29 or on Route 12 in Sonoma or up in Willamette Valley or down in Paso. It doesn't matter. but the stories are unique, and it's how you translate that content, that magic, is really what makes digital marketing work effectively. Marketing is no longer about the stuff you make, but the stories you tell. This is Seth Godin, who's a great marketing an entrepreneur leader who writes a lot about digital marketing and about storytelling, and it's really essential for the work that we do, or you should be doing for yourself. Just some simple facts. I mean, 43 states out of 50, are open for direct consumer shipping. I just read this morning about Delaware passing a bill, to allow wineries out of state shipping going in. But you're basically able to get to 95% of the market, which is more than enough to be dangerous. One of the things I like to emphasize is the fact that it's not all about the big wineries. The big wineries make most of the wine, but it's the small wineries. About 24% of DTC shipments in size last year came from wineries that were less than 5,000 cases. So you're a real player, and if you actually put in there that how they classify small is 5,000 to 50,000 cases. You're essentially looking at 60% of the market, 70% of the market. So small and mighty is where it's at. Not necessarily in volume, but in value. So we know that technology has really transformed how people live, work, shop, and play, just as it has for centuries, at least for 100 years. And businesses need or have to adapt, and you can see the technology here that makes these things pretty easy. But what's really changed, and I've had this slide for a number of years now, and it's really interesting to me how I keep adding things to it. You go back to 2003, this piece of furniture we called a desktop computer that got dirty and smudgy, and as you drank your coffee at your desk and waited for things to load so slowly. Those days, of course, are gone. In 2007 was the advent of smart technology on smartphones. Of course, in the advent of social media, Facebook and Twitter. 2010 was when we first had our tablets come into play. 2012 was a very important time for people in technology, because that was the advent of HTML5, which replaced Adobe in terms of having the ability to download content very fast on a mobile device and on your home computers. 2015 was the smartwatch. 2016 for the Echo and the Dot for voice-activated technology. And then, of course, AI was around for a while, but in 2019, it really hit the consumer realm. Then in 2020, obviously, the world of Zoom, GoToMeeting and other things really changed, became a whole new channel of communication and marketing. Of course, there was something else, the birth of a new channel, the virtual tasting experiences. And this is something obviously to the point where Wise Academy, many of you may know Wise Academy is one of the leaders as educators for the wine industry, for tasting room DTC. They started a whole series of courses on how to do virtual DTC experience fundamentals. And I know that there's even wineries now that are hiring people who are basically virtual DTC experience managers to run that segment, which is a whole new channel, albeit it's slowed down a bit with the pandemic evolving, but nevertheless, it is a serious channel that probably will have some legs on it. Then there's the birth of a new experience. This is just out, fresh, a week or two ago, where now our smartphone technology is incorporating augmented reality to make it easy and create your own augmented reality experiences. Some of you may be familiar with Living Labels, Crime 19, the wines of Treasury, and some other brands that are using augmented reality in the labels to create another dimension of experiences for consumers. And this is something that is now coming to everybody's smartphone. So the winners are going to be the ones that can use technology to tell their stories online. That's really the idea of the three-dimensional reality experience translating in a two-dimensional space. That's what this is about. If you look at it another way, this is one of my favorite slides because it's pictures worth 1,000 words. This is the Vatican, the Basilica, the Vatican 2005, very much a one-to-one relationship between people there and everybody else. And this is a one-to-many relationship in 2017 with people using smart technology to share their experiences with people around the world. Taking a look at who the American wine consumer is, this is the Wine Market Council study of 2019. Basically half of America is drinking wine, either frequently or less frequently, and maybe another 25% drink other alcohol. Wine drinkers are probably more women than male, although probably the purchasing power is still more on the male side. In terms of frequency, people who drink wine at least once a week is 14%, and less frequently, maybe another 35%. That's your 55%. Then you can see the bands of who's drinking wine in terms of age. Millennials, scary to see that we're actually up to 40 years. I think we're at 40 years old for millennials, but we're getting older, millennials, and boomers are where most of the action is at. But if you take a look at another study, because this one was done in 2019, but it mirrors 2016 by the Wine Marketing Council and Sonoma State did a study that showed, if you take a look at high frequency drinkers and occasional drinkers, you're looking at 89 million prospective drinkers in the United States drinking wine. And if we took a look at what their use of social media was by age group, and albeit this is 2016, I mean, obviously these numbers have grown dramatically, but nevertheless, the idea that social media, is not relevant as a means of discourse, people aren't talking about it, writing about it, speaking about it, communicating, was just not the case. Even then, you can see at all age groups, people are on all these different platforms. And that's even more the case today. And we'll look at some more current stats in a little bit. But the reality is that social media is really the most dynamic channel and channel of media for people to communicate their feelings and their likes and their aspirations about wine. This was a study done in 2019, also by Sonoma State, that took a look at how wineries are using their footprint in digital. There's a couple of things in here that were, I wanted to highlight. What the study said was that 98% of wineries use Facebook, but only 61% of those use paid ads. If you take a look at the ones that are actually using paid ads, 1/3 spend less than $100 a month on ads, $100 a month, which is really nothing. If you're boosting your posts, $15, $20 a piece, that gets you really nowhere, right? The other thing that was interesting was this here, as we'll talk a little bit later about the really increasing importance of SEO, search engine optimization. 50% of wineries say they do SEO in-house, which is really difficult to do, to be quite honest. And 1/3 of them don't do any SEO, which is really a crime and a shame, since it's the most cost-effective digital marketing that you can do. And we'll discuss that a little bit later. So transforming the customer journey, a very important concept. For hundreds of years or thousands of years, the customer journey was a linear one. You went from point A to point B. In the days when there were catalog stores and there was a Pony Express, and there was a store with Sears Roebuck and Montgomery Ward first started, they had their catalogs, 500-page catalogs in these stores in town, and people would place their orders, and then they would arrive at some point in time. And so it was very much a linear journey, even up until the 21st century, very much a linear journey. But then with the advent of social media and other digital tools, it became very much a nonlinear journey, some of which are managed sort of, and some of which are not. And I say that because some of these things like word of mouth, PR, social media, third-party sites are things that you have to, digital touch points that you have to, be proactive about. But all along this journey are opportunities to relate and communicate your story to people. So in the awareness and consideration, which I call the discovery phase, going into engagement, going into purchase or acquisition, and going into loyalty and retention. These phases are crucial in being relevant with content, a three-dimensional, two-dimensional thing with storytelling along the way in a seamless way is the way that you really, gain customers, keep your customers you have, and grow your business. And so that's really what digital marketing helps you do. Without a digital marketing strategy, you're really not going to be relevant throughout the life cycle of a customer journey. So let's take a look at some current and future trends. I love this slide. I mean, there's 1.3 billion websites in the universe, or no, in the world. 1.3 billion websites in the world. 7.8 billion people. The key thing here is the penetration. 66% of the world is now active, are unique mobile users, and penetration with social is quite substantial. Not everybody obviously has internet. I mean, for 59% may have internet. Other people may have mobile but don't have internet. But the penetration on social around the world is pretty remarkable where it's come to. And this is as of 2020. Take a look at U.S. platform trends. Important thing to consider is where we've come, and I've watched this number every single year. If you take a look at mobile and tablet together, you're almost 60%, 59% of people, their traffic on the internet is done on mobile devices. Only 41%, and falling, is on desktop. So when everybody talks about mobile first, I'm sure Commerce7, when they talk about their demos and their in the seminars they do about having a mobile first approach when you're designing your website, I mean, this just proves the point, right? People are spending more and more time on mobile, and this is where you really have to be working back from when you're building your strategy. It's a mobile strategy that works back from there. E-commerce as a percentage of total retail, this number, obviously, this is through 2019, is running close to 16%. Year-over-year growth was 14%. I can only imagine what that number is when we see 2020. I'm sure that'll be a much higher number, maybe 18%, something like that. But it continues to grow. And then total e-commerce revenue for retail, through here is growing substantially and is forecast to grow even more so over the next few years. And obviously, mobile commerce, as we mentioned, is soaring. It's just soaring. If you take a look at e-commerce spending via mobile, this is remarkable to see the growth here from 2016. This is mobile as a share of total e-commerce. I mean, it's growing dramatically. Mobile as a share, we're now at 72.9% of e-commerce is being done on a mobile device, right? That's grown 50%, more than 50% from 2016. So again, making sure that you're thinking about that as you figure out your strategy for e-commerce. There should be a mobile e-commerce strategy as opposed to just e-commerce strategy, right? Interesting fact in terms of the amount of time people are spending on devices. It's mind-boggling to me that people are spending 5 hours a day on either on apps or on their mobile webs or on their tablets or smartphones, whatever. It's gone up dramatically over the last 5 years, just grown every single year. And I'm sure if we take a look really at 2020 as a seminal year with people being at home a lot and spending their day certainly online, but mobile becoming being online is an everyday thing. This was done in 2019, but similarly, I'm sure the numbers even more so. They compared over a 3-year period by age group, the fact of adults who are online almost constantly. We can see how this grew during those periods at all age groups. And I can imagine, particularly for the older age groups, I'm sure this number grew a lot in 2020 when people were spending all that time, locked up at home. And so we're dominated by this, right? We live in this world. So if you don't have a digital marketing strategy, you're not going to be relevant to the people who are spending their time all day and all night online, right? In terms of most visited platforms, and this is 2020 data, it's interesting, people talk about Facebook being yesterday, right? Well, it's still the most dominant platform on the planet. Obviously, this is not US, this is worldwide. And you can see, WhatsApp, which is a dominant platform in China and other markets, Latin America. But really, Facebook and YouTube really dominate the landscape. Instagram continues to grow, but you have to be active on these platforms. If you take a look at U.S. Most popular media platforms. Percentage of U.S. adults who say they use the following social media sites online or on their cell phones. 75% of adults are using, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram is, in the 40% range. Then here's the rest. And you can see how this has grown over time. Instagram obviously has a faster growth rate than Facebook, but Facebook is still, notwithstanding all the privacy issues and everything else, is still a growing platform. It's a very important platform for the wine industry. This is fascinating to me because when I talk to wineries, and they'll ask me the question, do you really think people are finding out about products, going to learn about my products through Facebook ads or Instagram? And so this is just an interesting analysis, and you can see in terms of people who discover brands or products via ads on social for discovery by age group. So, regardless the age group, you can see that there's a significant people that are discovering brands or products. Discovering brands or products via recommendations on social, still a significant number. Researching products online via social networks, okay, from 40 to 50%. So people are finding out about you through social, okay? And if you're not there, and if you're not front and center, if you're not in a relevant way, you're missing this opportunity for people to find you and get to know you and engage with you and develop a relationship with you, right? And then, of course, likes and comments and positivity also drives people to, to engage with you. Just a little bit about internet advertising spend. Over time, you can see how this number has steadily grown. Desktop advertising is on the decline, and mobile advertising is way on the upswing. Year over year, people are spending more money on mobile advertising than on desktop. And where are they spending money? They're spending more and more money. Google's growing by exponential levels. Facebook advertising is growing, and Amazon, Twitter, and I can tell you Amazon is becoming really a dominant player. In our wine suitcase business, we spent a ton of money last quarter on Amazon with offline advertising. What Amazon would do is we did a digital mobile advertising campaign for everybody that hit our listings on Amazon for the past 12 months to do advertising off Amazon on their mobile devices. And it was very successful over a 3-month period, October, November, December. And we got even follow-up conversions in January and February from the campaigns in the fall. So, I mean, it's a connected world today. Amazon, even though they're not selling, they're selling wine in a limited way today because of Whole Foods. They can't do it the way they used to do it. But it's still a very dominant place for search. Google's #1 for search and Amazon's #2 for search. We did a webinar a few months ago on video advertising and video marketing, how to use video. So I'm not going to go into it here, other than to say that video is critical. #1, you saw the stats before on YouTube. And so if you don't have a video marketing strategy, you're going to be left in the dust because at the end of the day, picture's worth 1,000 words. These are the days of the Gutenberg Bible when there were no periods, there were no paragraphs. It was like just run on sentences, right? And, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And so it is with social media and digital advertising. When you use video, all the stats show in terms of engagement, likes, shares, conversions, everything else goes way up. So consumers are evolving every day. And so the question is, are you meeting their expectations, right? There's changing taste, habits, attention, implications. The pandemic, together with being stuck at home led to consumption. It was really interesting to see what actually people voted for with their wallets. Americans shifted dollars from going out to staying in. Family dinners, online tastings, or just sitting in the sun are all reasons to drink, right? So people consumed high levels of alcohol as well as high levels of digital content. I mean, engagement rates were through the roof. It was an interesting time period for us as an agency because of all the travel companies, the airlines, the hotels, and a lot of other companies that pulled out of advertising meant that the cost of digital advertising was cut by 50%. So you could do AdWords, you could do Facebook ads for cost per click was about 50%. And so it was a great time to be advertising and engaging. Conversion rates were up, Email open rates were up, even though people were sending, wineries were sending out more emails than ever. Opening rates were up, click rates were up, click-through rates were up, and conversions were up. So it was a great time to be, to be doing digital. And so what did people go for? They went for comfort. So obviously oat milk, eat and live better, right? Healthy stuff, crab, aspirational, right? Spoil yourself, dish soap, obviously. Pizza, ice cream is all comfort food, right? And of course, there's comfort food in alcohol as well. So if we took a look at the numbers for millennials, things that really, were great, blew through the roof was, hard seltzer grew tremendously. Beer, a lot of beer, craft beer, hard seltzer, red wine. These were really high growth categories, certainly for millennials, which is great because those are ultimately going to be the biggest consuming group going forward. The other thing is about people getting used to shopping for food and beverage online, which they didn't do before. And so survey, why you as consumers say they shop from a brand website. Just think about this on your own website, as if you're an existing a client of Commerce7 or you're considering Commerce7. I mean, these elements are, better quality, the quality, selection, customer service, personalization, which is a big deal that Commerce7 gets involved with. Feeling as part of a brand community, where social comes into play. These are the things that are driving people to make a decision to shop on a branded website. But already about 20% prefer to buy food and beverage on DTC. The alcohol market these are global statistics because obviously the bars and restaurants were shut down and we weren't able to replace that lost consumption at home. Alcohol consumption declined about 8%, but the growth in ready to drink alcohol beverage grew tremendously. I mean, Drizzly and all these other apps that are out there for making it easy for people to consume beverages, grew tremendously in 2020. Interesting thing about grocery, acceleration tremendously, people buying food online, right? 30% of all consumers say they've been shopping for food and beverage online during COVID-19, and 45% of all consumers say they prefer it. If you take a look at the numbers, this blew me away. 2020, 10.2% of grocery sales were online during COVID, and this is forecasted to continue to grow. And obviously, wine is going to mirror that. I believe wine is going to mirror that. So the opportunity is this, if e-commerce has been growing like this, right? If food and beverage can grow like this, I mean, think about what this means for the future of wine online. I think is like everything else, wine was a laggard. Buying wine online took for a while. I mean, I ran a software company during the height of the, during the 2007 to 2014, when really e-commerce came into its own a bit, and wine clubs were great, but it really took the last 3 years to really see e-commerce for wine take off, and then it just went nuts in 2020. We probably gained about 5 years, accelerated 5 years faster than we would have, and now it's here to stay. The question will be how will it continue like last year? Well, all those new customers that came online, particularly the older customers who never shopped online before, I think the answer is they'll be here to stay. The question is how much? We'll see. The bad news is that even though people bought a lot online, in terms of our GDP and the effect on the economy, we got to make up this number, and we will. And hopefully that will translate to even bigger, sales online going forward. So, we joke about what is the new normal, is there a new normal, right? You can reach a new mass of people who are engaging with digital marketing at a higher level than ever before, because we're more receptive to change now than ever before. And we're not driving down the road looking in the rearview mirror. But I just want to emphasize again, the customer has many paths to purchase, and it's no longer a linear customer journey. And you have to be relevant at all phases along this customer journey. So digital marketing elements, There's all these main categories, aspects of it. Social media are the platforms, and social media management is how you manage those platforms, and social media marketing is social advertising is how you use those platforms, to do digital advertising. You have paid search, which is on Google AdWords or Bing, and then you have email, of course, and text. You have SEO, with all work together, to create a digital marketing strategy. In terms of social media, to me is the backbone, is the core, the spine, because it helps you create awareness, so people can find out about you. It creates trust, which is critically important. And ultimately, if people trust you, they will ultimately convert. And what that means is they may sign up for your email list. They may buy wine. They may join a wine club. They may visit the winery. They may download a video. They may tell their friend about you. They may order your wine on a wine list. But it starts with this whole process, which is, again, mirrors the customer journey. So what makes a brand's social presence stand out? So, this was done by a study done by a marketing group, but obviously, marketers may think differently from consumers. And so what the surveys are showing, yes, creativity is really important in your campaigns. Ideally something that's memorable, that people remember, so that it's impactful, and entertaining. Obviously more important than being unique. I know digital marketers like to do a lot of fanciful stuff at times, but at the end of the day, we talk about, in our world, about edutainment, education, and entertainment together. We call it edutainment, right? Infotainment, edutainment. But entertaining and memorable and creative, all these things go together, and it shouldn't just be, a same shit, different day kind of stuff when it comes to, the stuff that you put out for content. Like you do it because you have to get an email out. You just put it out without having it part of a strategy, without making it relevant, without making it, of interest to your audience. Same thing with your social posts, right? Or newsletters, or whatever you're doing. I mean, it has to really be thoughtful. It has to be where you can, creative, memorable, impactful, and entertaining. Unique is sort of the last thing on the list. So, all these things are, this Venn diagram shows the things that are work together. I say 1 and 1 equals 4, because any one on their own is not as impactful as all together. I think the real missing opportunity for most wineries is SEO. Search engine optimization is one of the critical elements to get found. Just to give you some stats, there are 3.5 billion searches on Google every day. 23% of these, 23% of all website visits come from Google searches. 46% of product searches come from searches. And Google has a 92% market share when it comes to search. If you have your SEO done by your website designer, you're making a mistake, because they really don't understand SEO, and they don't understand the keyword strategy that you require for your specific brand strategy. And SEO is the starting point. Once you do it, it's free, you have it. And if you're not on page 1, when you always tell the joke, like, what's the best place to hide a dead body? It's on page 2 of Google, because nobody goes there. So the way to get your keyword ranking up is to spend time on really SEO. And if you have a good SEO ranking, it will help your SEM, which means your Google AdWords will do better and cost less, because they work together. And so when you combine SEO with paid search with your social media optimization, you have an engine that's running on full speed, as opposed to everything at once. And if you add that to email marketing as well will do better with an integrated strategy with the other channels as well. The other thing that's interesting is load time. This study, it was done, 40% of visitors will abandon a website if page loading speeds are more than 3 seconds. And some of the websites out there in wine country, are pretty bad because the images are not sized properly. There's no optimization of the site, and particularly on a mobile device. And so, and the other thing is, if you're not optimizing for load time, you get dinged by Google for search. So they will hit you for a lower ranking if your user experience on your mobile device is not up to par, and if your page loading times on your website are slow. So it's just something to really be looking at. And there are ways today, there's technology today in ways to improve your load times. So more wineries will be fighting for the same customer, stronger customer relationships. You want to drive lead generation campaigns, create innovative offers for customers, and get your best customers involved in connecting with their friends. Make them brand advocates. That's really the key. Evolving and innovating. I think that what came out of the pandemic. Every business realized it had to look in the mirror, if necessary, recreate themselves. Imagine if you were a restaurant, how did you survive? Besides getting your PPP loan, you had to recreate yourself. And a lot of wineries did the same thing. Change looks different for every business. And so, how did you evolve, and how are you going to continue to evolve? One way is to really understand the digital marketing planning, what I call checklist and thought process for creating a digital marketing plan. This is a graphic that I like. It's from the U.S. the Chamber of Commerce, that basically says, how much money companies should be spending on marketing. And to me, it's funny because, this says basically for a new company, you may need to spend between 12 and 20% of revenues on marketing. For established companies, 6 to 12% on marketing. I don't know wineries that spend this kind of money. I mean, marketing, wineries spend, to them, marketing is landscaping, having a nice tasting room, and shrubbery and things like that. But marketing is something that wineries don't want to spend money on. I know some wineries have a line item in their budget, 0% for marketing, when the reality is that marketing should be treated as an investment. If you do digital marketing correctly, you should be expecting a return on investment, just like you do for buying a piece of capital equipment. So if you think of marketing as an investment, it's less painful than if you think of it as an expense. This was a study done by Chief Marketing Officer Association, United States, surveyed 10,000 companies, excuse me. A same thing, depending on what industry you're in, consumer packaged goods spending, on average, they spend 9% of sales on marketing, right? Retail and wholesale were 4%, but somewhere in here, there's a number that you should get comfortable with, that you commit to spend on revenue, because it's the way to grow your business, and it is an investment. And this just shows an example from the Direct Marketing Association how different channels work. I mean, obviously, email, if done right, has the highest return. SEO is number 2. Display ads on internet is number 3, and so on and so forth. Keyword ads, AdWords. So there's various ways to spend your money. At the end of the day, as I mentioned, this just shows you an example of how a budget works. I mean, you can have a budget and decide to spend it in different ways on different ads. You have a budget percentage of different platforms, anticipate different cost per clicks, conversion rates, and ultimately come up with a budget with a goal of return on ad spend. For every dollar you spend, I want to get at least $2 back. And so it's not a billboard on the highway. You actually have a roadmap that says, okay, and you're looking at this every day, every week, every month. You're not just committing to numbers in pie in the sky. You're looking at numbers and what am I getting out of this? That's really the way to treat digital ad spend, like everything else, in terms of how you spend your money. So strategies for getting new customers. So, the problem wineries make with digital marketing is they don't have a strategy. And even if they have a strategy, they have several objectives they're trying to meet with one strategy, or they have one, they have one objective and they have conflicting strategies. So, an objective is, what's the overarching business problem you're trying to solve? And the what question is your approach that you're taking to solve that, meet that objective. How are you going to do it? What means to do it? And how much? With which partners and for how long? So it's really why, what, how, and how much is the key to a plan. So examples of objectives. How do I increase the number of website visitors and/or conversions? How do I increase the number of email addresses in my database? How do I increase visitor traffic or wine club signups in the tasting room? So if you marry these together, I want to increase the number of website visitors or conversions. Maybe I'm going to target, build a demographic audience on social networks they visit most with the best-selling wines or other special offers. If my objective is to increase the number of email addresses in my database, maybe I'm going to encourage new site visitors to redeem an introductory offer in exchange for the email address, maybe a light box or a pop-up, right? Or maybe I run a contest or a sweepstake or a quiz. Increase visitor traffic to the winery tasting room. That's my objective. Drive traffic by promoting off-site tasting events and community-oriented events focusing on Bay Area residents. Or I do an AdWords campaign to drive quality traffic from certain key cities. So once you want to do that, then the question is advertising. What is it going to cost me? In the old days, wineries would take ads in the San Francisco Chronicle, which was, like the billboard on the highway. They charge you by impressions, number of eyeballs, which in this day and age is kind of useless. It's really about cost per click. You want to create impressions that convert to something, and you pay based on, cost per click. And depending on how fine-tuned your audience is, you can pay anywhere from 25 cents if it's a boosted post on Facebook to, $5, $6 if it's going to be a lead gen ad. The other way is a cost per lead, which is a B2B tactic, which really doesn't apply for wineries unless you're doing it on LinkedIn. But basically, you're starting with, a generic audience, and you're adding things like gender, age, interest, occupation, education, geolocation. Do people belong to golf clubs or country clubs? Do they like to travel? Other things you can add. And as you add these things, obviously the costs go up. So the last piece is is platforms. Which platforms are relevant? From our standpoint, the primary platforms for the wine industry are Facebook and Instagram. Twitter is really not a consumer platform for wine. It's more of a B2B platform, and we don't spend too much time on that for clients. LinkedIn can be helpful for a B2B strategy. YouTube is great if you've got a digital library. Obviously, some people play around in Pinterest. There is some interest now in TikTok, but at the end of the day, be a master of a few platforms as opposed to being not a master in many. And so if you do a good job on Facebook and Instagram, you can make a major impact in your social media impression, as well as making sure on third-party platforms you're paying attention to TripAdvisor and Yelp and what's happening on Vivino and Seller Tracker and other third-party sites where you may have profiles and things like that. Lastly, make sure second to lastly, you may be on social media, but if you're not boosting, nobody's seeing your posts. Less than 1% of your potential audience will see your post if you don't boost $5, $10, $15 per post, particularly the key posts. It's just important to allocate a budget for social media posts to really make a difference. The last part is how important email is. I know that one of the questions that is asked a lot about by customers, clients, is what's happening with all the privacy, the changing in the rules from Apple and also will be Google in terms of restricting the ability to retarget the third party data. There's never been more value placed on owning an email. Email is primary data. So if you have an email, you can use that data not just for emailing, but to target those people in social media. So getting emails is more important than ever. And so making sure you understand what the value is, because if there's a blog on the Astra website, how to calculate the value of an email at your winery based on your history. That should determine what you're prepared to pay to your staff or externally to capture emails. Because the value of emails today is gold. It's really gold to get emails because that email is valuable to use in many different ways, and will be more so even going down the road. So that's been my 45 minutes. I think we're open now to questions. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Awesome. Thank you, Ron. So if anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get to them here. Got a couple to start off with. So you just talked about the value of a email to a winery, which I totally agree about there. Do you have any recommendations for how wineries can be capturing more emails, either in the
Yes.
tasting room or online?
Well, online is crucial. Every
Mhm.
every website should have a lightbox. Whether you use the free one from MailChimp or use Sumo or any of the others out there, you should have a lightbox that encourages people to sign up. If you and a lightbox, for those that know, it's a pop-up that pops up when someone comes. You can automate it so that it pops up for only for people who have not visited the website in the last 30 days, so that it doesn't constantly pop up. You can exclude certain people from it. And if you add a video to it, you'll get 4 times as many people signing up. That's the stats outside the wine industry. If you make it a video lightbox, you'll get more people signing up. You want to do it with an offer, ideally, and you can do a drip email campaign with it. So, they sign up and then they get a series of drip emails. That's the best way. You may think, well, make it 30, 40, and obviously it's a function of how much traffic you get to the website. But if you got 50 emails that way in the course of the year, that's 600 emails, okay? And that's those are free, right? And the Lightbox may cost you $20 a month. So that to me is number one, best way to do it. I'd also make sure that I had that on other different pages. You can also do an exit Lightbox where people, when they're leaving when they click X to Lightbox, a Lightbox pops up asking them to sign the email, which also works. So those to me are the two best ways. In the tasting room, technology helps. I mean, having tablets works. If you've got the POS provider that requires you to put an email address at POS, to place an order. If people want the receipts, make sure you've got an automated emails going to those people as well. But just think about every email as an opportunity.
Awesome. We've got a couple of questions here about different social channels. So someone's asking about Pinterest. Somebody's asking about TikTok. I guess what are your thoughts on these two newer channels here?
Well, TikTok obviously was early on for people, a younger audience. We've experimented with Fly with Wine. I think it's still an early, and again, there are plenty of other ways to get customers if you want to do video. I do YouTube before I did TikTok, but and again, if you've got limited time to spend, I'd really want to do a great job on Facebook and Instagram. Same thing with Pinterest. Pinterest is, we have some customers on Pinterest, but there's a lot of work. The worst thing you can do is do a half-ass job. Pinterest takes a lot of work to do, keeping it current. And so we have Pinterest for Fly with Wine. I mean, it takes a lot of work to be current and on it. And for wine, it hasn't proven to be a pretty significant channel. So if you've got other things on it, if you've got other parts of your business that make sense, then Pinterest might be a good thing. But for selling wine or promoting wine, again, I would divert my attention to the other channels of Facebook, Instagram, and the stories, but all of that goes with it, and then and YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And with Instagram, we have a question here asking about strategies for expanding your followers on Instagram, and asking if Instagram is only effective if you have a large audience, or if you're able to continue to grow your audience there.
Well, the world has changed in terms of followers. I mean, followers are a vanity metric. We're more interested in engagement than followers. You can have 100,000 followers, but the engagement is nothing. People spend a lot of time building up followers. The reality is that you want to have really healthy engagement. So if you have really good content, you have people engaging, focus on the engagement rates. But that's why it's important to build an email list, because you can take your email list and you can pump it into social media. So you can take your email list and upload it into Facebook and Instagram and find lookalikes, right? So your purchasers, find me purchasers. Find me lookalikes to my purchasers. If those people are using the same email address in Facebook that they are on your email list, you'll be able to serve ads to them, right? That's the most effective way to grow your following on Instagram and Facebook.
We have a couple questions here asking about if you have any recommended SEO analysis tools. They're saying they've used Google Search Console in the past, but are wondering if there's any other good options to look into.
Yes, we love Moz. We spend a lot of money on Moz, M-O-Z. Moz is a great one. Neil Patel, Patel, has a blog, which is a great blog on SEO, and he has his software platform he sells as well. So I would check him out as well. But Moz is we've used it for 4 years, a great platform.
Awesome. Have you run into any issues running ads for wine? Carol here is mentioning that she gets an error when running ads because of Google not allowing the alcohol sales.
Yeah. So Google is different than Facebook. Google will not allow you to do retargeting. Certainly, you can't retarget. If someone hits our site from Google, we can't retarget them with a Google ad. We can target them with Facebook Pixel. So Google is very restrictive on alcohol, even though you may see an aberration every so often. You can do ads for tasting rooms, and we do ads for sales. I mean, we do ads for sales. You can't do retargeting, but you can do ads. So if you're getting, an ad is not approved, you got to go and fight it. I mean, there's a reason why it may be, but you need to have you may need to have an H gateway on your website. I know that YouTube requires you can't do a YouTube video for alcohol unless you have an H gateway on your website. So that may be the issue that they're having.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, you can do a Google search ad for sales for wine?
Yes. Yeah, we do it all the time. Yeah.
Awesome.
And for Wine Club, I mean, absolutely can.
Awesome. You talked about earlier in the presentation that you saw opens, clicks, conversions for emails going up over the pandemic, even though consumers are getting more emails than usual. Do you think this trend is going to continue?
No. I mean, I can see it already. No. I mean, the reason is people are busy. You have to be more creative. As I said before, you don't go down the road, driving down the road looking in the rearview mirror. Now that we have the pandemic, you don't look back at the pandemic and think the future is going to be the same. So people had all the time in the world. They were eager. They were, spending a lot of time online. Now they're out, going outside. They're going visiting wine country. They're going shopping. They're going on vacation. And so you can expect that opening rates may go down. That's okay. You want to make sure that the click-through rates are high. So if they do open, opening rates are a function of nothing more than subject lines. Once someone has opened the email, the real value, the relevance is if they click on it, it's the content. So you want to make sure that your click-through rates are still strong. And if they're not, you got to examine why. But it wouldn't surprise me to see opening rates decline, less so for Wine Club members, but on your basic subscriber list, because people are busy. They're doing other stuff. So I would really I would really be doing a lot of testing on my emails. I wouldn't just do the same thing. I would really be testing and seeing what got people to click on the once they open.
Makes sense. Over the past year at Commerce7 here, we saw a lot of club members sign up from online, from the online channel over there, from the website. And so now that you have these potential members who have made, maybe they've never visited the winery, maybe they're not planning to visit in the winery in the future. Are there any specific ways to, I guess, cater to this subgroup of club members so they don't feel left out or forgotten now that the tasting room's opening up?
Yeah, I think retention is going to be a problem for those subset. Those people that signed online, if they've never visited, then you got to have a retention strategy. What can I do to those people? Can I get them in to visit? If not, then maybe doing something extra for them along the way. Maybe the 6 months, including an extra bottle in the shipment. Surprise and delight them. If you can't surprise and delight them in the winery, you're going to have to surprise and delight them online, or else you may lose them over time. I think that having a retention strategy is important. There's loyalty strategy and there's a retention strategy, and keeping members involved and engaged is really important. I think that's something wineries should spend some money. They should have a budget for retention, I think, is what I would say.
Awesome. So yes, the recording of this session is going to be sent out. We're also going to send out the slide deck or make it available. That looks like all the questions there. Ron, really appreciate your time today. Really appreciate you joining and sharing all this with us today. Appreciate everybody taking the time to tune in here. Ron, if any of the audience wants to get in contact with you or learn more about Astra Digital, what's the best way to do that?
Ron at astradms.com. It's on the screen. They can reach out to me, or they can go to our website and call me. It's fine.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Ron. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.